Hello there, General Kenobi. Welcome to an exciting new episode of Talking About Stoicism. I feel I really sell it with these intros. Anyway, I thought we would talk about today. Let's cast Seneca aside for one more video. We will get through that book one day. But I wanted to talk about the feeling that you are not good enough. I wonder if you ever get that feeling, because I get that feeling quite a lot, that I'm not good enough, or that I'm not doing well enough, and that's really something I wouldn't call it necessarily a lack of confidence. I don't feel that it really is a lack of confidence. I feel fairly confident in what I do, but I still feel quite often that it's not enough, that I could be better, that I should do more. And that's an interesting thing for me. It's an interesting thing for me to deal with, and try to process. And then I thought to myself, well, if I feel this way, then surely there are other people who also feel that way, right? And then I thought, how can you bring this back to Stoicism and relate it to Stoicism? And I thought of a very fundamental concept within Stoicism. The Greek word for which is prokopi, and that means something like progress. Progress towards, in the case of Stoicism, progress towards wisdom, towards being a sage. And I find that one of the most powerful, honestly, one of the most powerful concepts in Stoicism. It's also one that has a tendency, I think, to be abused. So I thought it was worth talking about in some detail today. So here we go. The Stoics, and really it's a matter of pick any Stoic that you like. Marcus Aurelius writes about this quite a lot. Epictetus writes about this quite a lot, because it's such a central topic. So the Stoics say, okay, so here's the deal. Virtue is the most important thing. Without virtue, you can't lead a good life. You have to be virtuous. Otherwise, how can you be happy in life if you don't do the right thing? If you do the wrong thing, how can you be happy? So you should be virtuous. You should do the right thing. And if you wish to walk the path of Stoicism, there are certain things you should do. You should be rational. You should be calm. You should not let emotions get the better of you, neither positive nor negative emotions, right? That means there is a time for laughter and there's a time for crying, but it shouldn't be too much. It should not lead you. You should be rational. You should be in charge of your thoughts, so that your mind doesn't get distracted. Now, as I've said in the past, nobody's probably going to complain too much about being too happy, but people do complain about being too sad or too frustrated or too angry, right? So those negative emotions, the passions, negative passions, Stoics would say, those are certainly an issue. And so the Stoics say you should control that. And then there's all the other teachings. Some things are within your control, some things are not, etc. But in conducting yourself, you should be calm and rational. You should go along with the universe, whatever the universe puts on your path, the Logos puts on your path in Stoic terms. You should go along with. You should remember that there are preferred and dispreferred, indifference, etc. Now, see the previous 5,000 videos, something, right? So, what's interesting though is that I find is that the Stoics make a provision. They say, okay, so you should be doing all these things. You should be calm and rational and collected. You shouldn't get negative emotions take a hold of you, so that you don't become angry or frustrated as much as you can. But there will be moments that you fail. It's a built-in, sort of like a fail-safe mechanism. There will be moments that you fail. And what matters at the end is that you make progress. Prokopi, right? If you make progress, then you're doing the right thing. Now, the reason I said this can be abused is that some people, I think, might interpret this as, oh, okay, I can do whatever I want, and then say, oh, sorry, well, I had an off day, but hey, I'm making progress. But that's not how it works. It's a very sincere approach, right? So there should be sincerity in what you do. And then when you do that thing, when you follow that pathway of Stoicism, you should just remember that you are going to mess up. But that could be okay if you have made a sincere effort. And that's the vital qualifier there. You do have to have made a sincere effort. If you're making no effort, and that's something that some people certainly do, if you make no effort at all, and every time you say, no, I had an off day, it can happen. That's not fair. That's not the way that process was meant by the Stoics. So I firmly believe. Now, to give you a concrete example, recently I felt this way. I felt that I wasn't good enough in my work. I was this term is now practically over, but this term I had an advanced statistics course I was teaching, and I've taught that once before. I've taught a regular stats course, introductory stats course many times, but this one's the second time I taught it. And for some reason, I taught one class, and for the lovers out there, that was exploratory factor analysis was the topic. I didn't feel it went right. It just didn't feel right. I felt that it was a bad explanation of the material, which can happen. And if you are an educator, then this is a very frustrating thing, because often it's, and if you work in education, please tell me I'm not the only one who experiences this. But then you walk out of the classroom or later that evening, and then you think, that's how I should have explained this. That's very frustrating, because then you can't really go back, because the class is taught. Like that's it for you. There's no more time to redo an entire class typically. So in my case, I ended up redoing the PowerPoint presentation for next year. And I put that up, and I also sent the students an email and said, okay, I didn't feel that went well, so here we are. I'm sorry. I revised these slides. Maybe this is clearer. I got some kind responses from students, including some people who said, I think you're a bit too harsh on yourself here. But that's the discipline, and I find it difficult to strike a right balance with that, because I am harsh on myself. I have high expectations of others, reasonable expectations, so I hope, but high expectations, and I also have high expectations of myself, higher expectations of myself than of others, because those are the standards I conduct myself by. I think that was a sentence. But in those moments, it's important to think of, but look at the progress I've made. I noticed this year, I was teaching a lot of this material that last year I found in some cases difficult to teach. It was the first time I was teaching it. It's difficult material to begin with. I'm not a statistician, I'm a psychologist, right? So it's difficult to begin with, but then I looked back, my little teaching journal, at the end of every class, I do a quick overview, write down quickly what went right and what could be better next time. And I looked at some of the classes I kind of struggled with last year, and now I wrote down, that actually went really well. I think that was pretty clear, and that's progress. It's because I've done the work, I've put in the time, I've read a lot of statistics textbooks over summer. It's interesting, but that's how you make progress. And I think generally, it's an important reminder to ourselves. I do think you should hold yourself to high standards. I do think you should strive to be the very best version of yourself you can be. And sometimes it's easier than other times. And sometimes it would be wise to remember that the standard you are holding for yourself, the standard that you're judging yourself by, is too high. Too high. And even then, remember all the progress you've made. I'm not the person I was 3 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago. I'm a different person now. In many ways, I think a better person. I hope, but I think so. I think in many ways a better person. That's progress. And we shouldn't forget that progress is enough. Because you won't be perfect. You'll never be perfect. The Stoics themselves are very clear about this. You know who you should aspire to be? A sage, like Socrates. But then invariably they add, but guess what? You're not going to be a sage like Socrates. That was only Socrates. You are a lesser person. That's just the way it is. You're never going to be perfect. And these people that the Stoics revered as sages, well, they were not perfect either, but they're worth emulating as long as you realize that you will mess up. Probably a lot. But if you do your due diligence and you keep following the way, you should notice that you start to mess up less and less. And it takes time and effort. But that's the rule of the game. You can't make progress without effort. Whatever it is you seek to progress in, whether it is applying Hellenistic philosophy to your life, or advanced statistics, or learning how to drive a car, or learning how to cook souffles, you can only master that by practicing, by putting in the time and the effort. And by doing so, if you stick to it, you will make progress. It's impossible, I think, to put in genuine effort and not make progress. I don't think it's possible. But there we are. I hope this was useful. Let me know what you think about these things, and if you also feel that you're not good enough at times, and then what you do about it, because that's always interesting to see and read. Progress. I wish you a very good week.